say, those conversations are continuing, David Crutton. It's a rather unorthodox opening to proceedings this evening.
Yes, indeed, and we're talking about the broader scheme of what's happening around the world at this moment in time, aren't we? And we're looking at the players just in discussion with each other. You don't quite know what's gone on within the confines of the respective dressing rooms, or who or what has taken the lead with this, but it's certain to say, Phil, that at this moment in time, as you say, it's uncertain. I've got to say, from the point of view of what you would look at a footballer being ready to go and play a game of football, it's all very relaxed, it's all very low stress, low impact. There's not many look as though they've been through the requisite warm-up to go into a 90-plus minute game of football. So I suppose the next couple of minutes, next few minutes, we shall see just exactly what the plan is or what the course of action is.
As Jorge Mas, the managing owner of Inter Miami, in discussions with the sporting director Paul McDonough. The reports are that the players don't want to start the game. Their intention to join the protest over the fatal shooting of Jacob Blake. The officials with an issue here as well. The team sheets were handed in a little later than usual. The Atlanta players were out there, it would appear, ready to start. These conversations will continue. As you say, David, it does put things in a very different perspective. You can see all the players with the Black Lives Matter t-shirts. And the players have been taking a knee ahead of every game at the MLS's back tournament. That has continued as well since the regular season resumed.
We have seen that. We've also seen the reaction from pockets of people towards that particular gesture. But what we've seen so far, and as you say, Phil, when we're talking about a football match and when we're talking about the broader scheme and what's happening not just in America but on a global level, we hear different people, different organisations talking about making a stand, talking about gestures and empty gestures. When it starts getting to the point where it's tangible movement, tangible progress that actually gets people to stand up and pay attention to the issues that we are discussing, as I said, on a broader global scale, then situations such as this, in what is, in the grand scheme of things, just a football match, just a soccer match, perhaps the protest, the point that's being made, or potentially being made in this instance, is one that the players as a whole want people to sit up and take notice of.
And the Atlanta United players I mentioned had been out there earlier. They are now currently back in their dressing room. We are awaiting word from that Atlanta United dressing room. As mentioned, Jorge Mas there, the Inter Miami owner, didn't appear too concerned at this stage. His team are out there, as you can see, stripped and ready for action. There was some talk earlier actually that the game between Orlando and Nashville might not go ahead for the same reason. That did kick off. That's currently 1-1. They're just over half an hour in. And there was therefore the understanding that because that game started, this one would also be played in Florida as well tonight. But we still, as you can see, await confirmation of that. Difficult for all of the players in particular. They want to have their say, but they also need to know whether they have a game to get ready for here.
I think as well, when we look at the two teams that are involved in, or potentially involved in tonight's fixture, you're talking about a team that's been very successful since it came blasting into MLS in Atlanta United, and a team that hasn't started well into Miami. But let's be honest, they've got one of the most famous people in the world that is behind that particular sporting franchise, so any connection to that gets it global recognition. Any connection to teams that we're talking about in MLS, coming off the back of the MLS's back cup, their utmost to try and get some form of competitive sport up and running, didn't they, in the bubbled off tournament down in Florida. Now it's a case of moving back into what we would deem, I don't know if you can call it the regular season anymore, because it's the most irregular of regular seasons, isn't it? But from what you see with the players here, it's all done in the type of spirit you feel. There's a huge togetherness between not just the individuals in their specific team, but the players as a whole. I'm just very intrigued to see how this is being led, who's leading it, where it's going, the real intricacies of what we've seen in not just sport in America but sport across the world. We've seen LeBron James step forward and show himself to not be just an athlete, to go forward and say and do things that really do mean something to people and genuinely attempt to change people's lives. And perhaps athletes and different players from different sporting kind of backgrounds are looking to make tangible change as well, which is to be absolutely admired.
Yeah, absolutely. From a sporting perspective, of course, they want to play the game that they've been training for over the last few days, but there is much more at stake and in play in this situation. Responsibility to a point falls more on the senior players. We have seen a little earlier in the warm-up a discussion between Luis Robles, the captain of Inter Miami, the vastly experienced goalkeeper, who was talking to Jeff Laurentowicz of Atlanta United, probably the most senior figure in their squad, who's been named amongst the substitutes for this game. And still believe that further conversations are going on inside the dressing room at the moment, from where Atlanta United are still yet to emerge. You mentioned David Beckham, David, who of course isn't here. He's watching on with the rest of us, actually from home in England, probably tuned into our coverage right now, with those travel restrictions in place to the USA. Jorge Mas and Paul McDonough, formerly of Atlanta United, the sporting director, have been leading their particular conversations, I guess, right now. There's Rodolfo Pizarro, the designated players. He was a goal scorer in the victory here at the weekend, their first home game, of course, saw that 3-2 win against Orlando City. The unconfirmed reports we are getting now is that the game is not going to take place. That is not confirmed. We'll stay with these live pictures whilst we await further information from the Inter Miami CF Stadium here, from inside the dressing rooms. But it is not looking promising that this game will get started, David.
Well, we've seen what's happened in the NBA as well, haven't we? It's a case of players taking action. And from my point of view, when you're looking at what you expect from an athlete, professional sports person, and the responsibility, we're very quick to judge them when they don't behave in a certain way, aren't we? Very quick to say that they've let the public down or people down when they have acted out, but when they've taken actual social responsibility, as it appears to be the case here, yes, there's a broader political aspect to it, which will get the team, the players, both clubs will get judged for. But if it's a case of human to human, if it's a case of making a stand for things that we as a society absolutely should not deem to be acceptable, then a platform such as this, as I said, with two teams that are, well, one's very well known in MLS, one is well known because it's brand new and because it's owned by a very famous ex-footballer and a famous person in his own right, David Beckham, then I think the ripples, I think the after effects, I think the waves will get sent around, not just the sporting world, but the world as a whole. Because if we're looking at people to stand up and take action, people looking to do their bit, then this group of footballers have discussed it, have spoken to each other. As you said, Phil, there's very experienced footballers, not just MLS footballers, but international footballers that potentially would have been involved in this particular fixture. And I've seen different cultures, different backgrounds, different ways of living, different ways of approaching a society, and if it's deemed to be the course of action, more power to them for actually standing up and doing something.
Sentiments shared by so many, I'm sure. Jorge Mas on the phone. Paul McDonough has been likewise in the last few minutes, but the fact that those match balls are being collected from the sidelines would suggest that we are not going to start this game. That is what we are hearing, but still yet to be officially confirmed. Difficult discussions for the officials to have as well. We're out there and ready to go. There was an understanding that maybe the Orlando-Nashville game wouldn't start. It did, which led us to believe that this one would follow suit.
And I think as well, Phil, it reflects as I said, I keep talking about things on a global scale, but you're absolutely right. The world has changed in the past 6 months. It's completely changed, and we are still back to, or trying to get back to what we deem to be normal, talking about a football match, having the pleasure of taking in a football match, but in the grander scheme of it, yes, we'd love to sit down and watch. I'll take you through your views at home, this particular football match, given the narrative to it, but the broader narrative, the bigger perspective on the whole situation is far more important, to be honest. It's a wonderful and pastime, and it's a wonderful sporting occasion when we get the chance to sit and watch a football match. It's something that we do take a lot of pleasure and pride in, but we do absolutely know where it fits in the grand scheme of things, and we can see what's going on at this moment in time. It seems to be getting the balls together, pulling in all the different aspects of who gets to put a game on. We've seen the officials look a little bit nonplussed. We've seen the players here very much not ready for action, very low key. And in a situation such as this, you're kind of looking at it and thinking, why has it happened at such a late time? But if it is to be called off, the fact that they have left it to the last minute means that it will garner far more attention than it would have done, perhaps, say, calling the game off yesterday.
Yeah, that perhaps part of the thinking. Robert Sabiga, the referee, looks like he might be on the way to inform the players of the final decision here. In consultation with Natalie Simon, the fourth official. Handshakes going on between some of the players down there now. There will be ramifications as to what happens from here, whether the game will be replayed, whether the match will be forfeited. These are all possibilities to ponder at a later stage. I guess the nature of the late postponement, which is apparently what we are seeing here, the refusal of the players to start the game, only adds to the power of their message and the protest. It appears as if it was Atlanta United who were the side refusing to start, given that Inter Miami were out there in their kit. Discussions between the two captains, and now, as you can see, between the officiating team. There's no supporters here anyway because of the protocols in place after the COVID-19 pandemic. The game to be played behind closed doors, so the fans not an issue in this particular fixture. The global audience waiting for kick-off. As mentioned, a powerful message really being sent by the players. When we talk about those experienced players, few fall into that category more than Brad Guzan. Looks like everybody will be crowding round the referee here. And this may be the images that you will see in support of the message that the players are making. As there are continuing efforts to persuade the Atlanta players to start the game. Very difficult. We can only surmise really what is currently going on. This is a show of solidarity from both sets of players, suggesting it is a decision that they have taken, and that they are all united in their decision not to play this game. Remarkable scenes.
Situation, having the privilege of being here, sat next to you, Phil, to try and take this game in. When you talk about it from a former player's perspective, honestly say, never been in this position at all.
It's incredible, isn't it? The players having a certain responsibility. Many of them, yes, they'll be privy to the decision and the conversations, and I'm sure there will be a unanimous decision taken collectively. Some may have more of a say in that than others, and still really confusion reigns.
But it's got to be that, hasn't it? It's the collective. There's got to be strength in the collective of these players talking and the united message that they want to send out. That's how it's got to be. You see Brad Guzan and Luis Robles here talking away. This is me preempting what they might be talking about, but two very, very experienced goalkeepers, very well respected members of their particular clubs throughout their careers. They know the ramifications. They understand what a stand like this would, or how it would reverberate, not just around the sporting world, but the world in general, and even more so, perhaps, if you look at America and the divisive nature of what can be seen to be going on in that particular society. But it's reflected around the world. We've seen protests, we've seen people stand up and be counted around the world with regard to what is the next step for us all together as humanity. And if it means forfeiting a game, if it means a game such as this doesn't go ahead, and it sparks a greater debate, which means that further on down the line, equality and diversity, things that need to be addressed, and the things that certain brackets of society take for granted, if that's then seen and discussed and debated, and there's some form of want and need and working towards a level playing field, excuse the analogy, then it can only be for the greater good.
Well, it is a significant story developing, certainly not the story that we were expecting to be bringing you tonight. One that will certainly make headlines, that very much the intention. What we are getting, despite the fact that the players are still out there on the field in conversation, is that the game will not happen. The photo of them all together is the image that they want projected, that they are refusing to play the game as a protest. So much more at stake, as we say, than soccer tonight.
We've seen it in the past, haven't we, Phil? We've heard players of different generations talk about or trying to address what they'd heard when they're watching teams in latter years with racial abuse being aimed towards players on the pitch, and saying you can't walk off, you can't let people like that win. But we're talking about a broader social justice issue, which these players are saying it's bigger than anything to do with that kind of player-fan interaction, isn't it? It's about lives being lost. It's about them wanting to stand up and say something and be heard on behalf of the people that can't be heard or haven't got a voice to be able to speak to.
The two captains and goalkeepers, Luis Robles and Brad Guzan, more heavily involved than most you would have thought in this decision. It was interesting as well, wasn't it, that the officials were at the centre of the photo that was taken. To standing with the players, and I think there is the general perception that something more needed to be done. A stand such as this has had to be taken given everything that is going on. They have had a big part to play, those two today. We thought it would be on the field in goal as the respective captains of a much anticipated MLS game, but it is an MLS game that is not going to happen. The players have decided not to play tonight by way of protest. A significant story developing in Fort Lauderdale this evening. Not the one though that we were expecting to bring you on the pitch. No game. Into Miami against Atlanta United. Match postponed.
This copyrighted broadcast of Major League Soccer may not be retransmitted, reproduced, or rebroadcast without the express written consent of Major League Soccer.